this is a project, as you can see on the board, that emerged from the study of the ancient world. At the University of Michigan, every semester, there are about 150 courses that teach the ancient world. Every semester, so about 300 to 400 courses a year. It really depends how you count. In those courses, there are about 3,000 to 5,000 students every semester that work on the ancient world. Again, it really depends on how you define the ancient world, and we define the ancient world as in the broadest of terms. Chronologically, it could be any department, from the Department of History to Art History to Near Eastern Studies, where I am at, Department of Anthropology, Department of Classical Studies, and maybe even some other departments. The truth of the matter is that some of the stuff that we develop here, or some of our thoughts, our concepts, could be applicable to any course. I wouldn't say in the sciences, but definitely in the humanities and the social sciences. So it'd be very nice for you, and I invite you to think throughout, not so much only getting to know us and our project, but how much of this is applicable to whatever units you are in. And we'll maybe have the opportunity to have some discussion about that later on. And we're interested in any comment or feedback on either level, that is, things that are related to our project. What can we do better? Where do you see challenges? What do you think could change? Where are things that we've missed, and so forth? But we're also very interested, because one of the charges, we're very interested in how this could be applied to your own units and to your own world and your own realm, mainly because the TLTC, who funds our project with hundreds of thousands of dollars, charged us with making this accessible to the entire university community. So they found something in our project that seems attractive to the entire university. So we're interested in feedback in that realm as well. So don't just listen to me, but think with me and with us together here and see if we can come up with something interesting. Final comment before I begin is to thank my colleagues, Julie and Tom, that are here to both support me morally, but also to participate. I hope they come from different realms of the project. I'll show you in a second that we have 11 people working in this project simultaneously, and if they can bring their aspect to this, feel free to jump in and to comment and to add to what I have here. Okay, with that, no further ado, let's jump right into it and introduce the project. So, as I said, it's a project about the ancient world and about teaching the ancient world. The project, the beginning of this work actually goes back over 10 years ago, 12, 13 years ago, among the circles of scholars and graduate students at the University of Michigan who study and teach the ancient world. Discussions started to evolve many years before the term engaged learning even came to the surface. We didn't know that one day the entire university will go into this, but we were thinking about our own field and how to teach students the ancient world, the world that existed, if it's the medieval world or the worlds before that, in more ancient societies. That's something that universities do. And we looked at two major elements within that capacity of teaching the ancient world. One is that the teaching of the ancient world goes back about 1,000 years. You know, if you go to the earliest universities in Europe, the universities that began the process where we are now on the sequence of that story, universities in Italy or in France, later on in England, you see that the ancient world was part of the curriculum, the study of the ancient world, the study of the ancients, the Greek philosophers, the Roman politicians and army, the medieval Christianity and so forth. They were teaching that in Bologna and in Paris already in the high Middle Ages. And one of the things that we have seen, me and my students and my colleagues, as we were discussing this over lunches and at times in seminars and on ways to conferences, on ways back, we've seen, everyone highlighted the fact that the ancient world has been taught for the last 1,000 years pretty much in the same way. Not much has changed. If I would transform you in time 1,000 years ago to Bologna, you'd need to know Latin because the classes were in Latin. But other than that, the class would pretty much look the same, other than the fact that we use today, we would use C tools or PowerPoint or whatever it is, and they used manuscripts with illustrations. But the principles of teaching remain the same. What do I mean by that? There's one central element behind that statement, and that is that the study of the ancients in the classroom always focused on the transmission of data between the teacher and the students. The teacher had a tremendous amount of information that it was usually a he, there were no she teachers 1,000 years ago, but a he would accumulate that knowledge within him through learning and reading and being a student himself. And in the classroom, he would need to transform that knowledge, disseminate that knowledge among the students. And the students, it really doesn't matter if it was folders or Macintosh computers or manuscript, they would sit and they would chart and they would summarize and they would be passive receptors of information. They would receive the information. They would accumulate the information that was transferred to them from the teacher. This is the basic model. Yeah, they incorporated pictures. In the ancient world, we show slides, we show PowerPoints, we try to, we tell jokes. They told jokes in the ancient world, different jokes than ours, most of them inappropriate in today's classroom. But, you know, the model remained the same. Now, some of my students, and then I bought into this as well, have raised the question already 10, 15 years ago, have highlighted the fact that the learning environment, especially with the rise of the internet, is changing in one crucial factor for the study of the ancient world. Namely, that much of the information that we used to transfer in classes for 1,000 years is now readily available to people and they could access it in a relatively easy, accessible, friendly way, and therefore the role of the teacher is not needed almost at all, or at least you would agree with me, not as much as it used to be in the 1500s or the 1400s, where all the information was not there. It was in the head of the teacher. Yeah, there were some books, but those were not accessible, and people would not go on and reading them. And even the beginning of the 20th century, before the internet, there were who's going to go and read those huge textbooks? So you had the professor, you paid the professor to read it, to make it accessible, to make it funny, to make it understandable, and he would take the material and move it. But today you go to Wikipedia or you go anywhere else, you have everything available right there. What do you need the teacher for? And indeed, we have seen a decline in the last decade or 15 years. You ask anyone who teaches in the humanities in general, but in the ancient world in particular, you see a decline in the number of students, a steadily decline of people who want to go into those classes. It's a mystery why. You know, why 20 years ago in the introduction to the classical world, it was classes of 500, and today it's classes of 50 or 75 students. What happened? There are many answers to that. One of them is that you don't need the teacher anymore. Even if you're interested in anything, you just go and you access it. When you have to sit for a full semester to hear about the history of Greece, or if you can have it with all the pictures and with everything on Wikipedia in 10 seconds. That was one element, one crucial element, and from that point on, we started thinking about ways that require us, since the environment of learning is changing, to change the method by which we teach. And the central thing that the central component in which we've experimented throughout these years and so forth was to change the focus. That's, in a way, in a nutshell, the entire essence of what we do. We changed the focus of the ancient classroom from the teacher to the student. And that's our definition of engaged learning. When engaged learning came to, we didn't use the term engaged learning, we used other terms. When it came in, we saw that, hey, the university powers think in many ways in the same way that we do. Engaged learning is really there, but our definition of engaged learning is involvement, a focus on the student. in the classrooms that we teach, we gradually degrade the role of the teacher as the passer, the transformer, the communicator of knowledge. And we allow the students to partake in the production of that knowledge. That's, in a nutshell, everything that we do. We develop all sorts of tools, and the classroom is very different. It's not a classroom where, when I walk into my classroom, it's not a lecture of an hour and 20 minutes where I share information. I'm more of a facilitator. I'm a challenger. I am the creator of the framework. And within that framework, students who have themselves worked with our exercises and with the tools that I will show you that we've developed, they have now developed the information themselves and they share it, they bring it into the class, and they kind of start disseminating the information themselves, and I kind of piece the puzzle together. Sometimes I challenge them, or I ask questions, or I complicate things, and I still tell jokes from time to time. Usually, like you, they're not so funny. No one laughs, but we move on. You know, it's a way to kind of take it around. That's the major thing that we've done. Two other things that come into this, especially in particular to Ann Arbor. One is that many of our tools are meant to not only engage the students, that is, involve the students in the production of the information, but they're also meant to bridge a gap that exists between our students and the ancient world. And I don't need to explain that too much. We study Greek and Rome and the world of Islam and the ancient world of the Israelites, and we are thousands of miles away from where these events took place, and we're thousands of years away. There are a lot of gaps, chronological, geographical, and so forth. And one of the challenges, how do you teach the Mediterranean world in Ann Arbor, was in the back of our minds as well as a secondary, I would say, goal, not only to involve students, but to find a way to transform them, to take them, to change that gap, or to bridge that gap, if you want, between us and the ancient world. So how do we do that? Most of the work in the last 10 years or so, since we started playing around with this and we applied for certain grants, we got small grants and larger grants before we hit the jackpot of the TLTC. And then that gave us, you know, this is going to take us through retirement. They gave me $1 million, and I have no clue of what to do with it, you know. Now I have to spend it somehow to develop these tools. But even before that, years before that, we developed all sorts of small tools. Much of it was centered on one course. This is a slide that represents a website that we're developing. It's still not accessible for people, but it's our project website. And on this website, we hope to present all the resources that we're developing for the study of the ancient world. If you want to see it today, and if these slides are available later, you can access it. But if you research it on Google, you would not see it. You can read about the project, about the people who are the team, the various people on the project are right here. And under resources, there's a long list of various resources that we develop in order to achieve those three goals. However, the truth of the matter is that throughout the project, up to this current stage that we're going to make it accessible to the entire university community, most of the material was developed for one particular class. This is a class called The Land of Israel, Palestine, Through the Ages. It's a class about ancient Israel, the region that we today call Israel or Palestine, throughout history. The reason we chose this class, it was very convenient. First, I teach the class. Second, it was fitting to our goals because it's a very big class. It's a class that is taught every year in LS&A, and at the time we had about 300 to 400 students who took it every year. So it's a big, big auditorium with students. It was a classical ancient world class where the teacher stands and the students take notes, and the exactly what we wanted to change. So we chose this class as sort of a laboratory, and we said, all right, we have access to it, we have graduate students working as GSIs in it, let's experiment in this class and see what we can change. This goes back to maybe 2002, 2003 when we started. So a lot of the material, and I'm going to take you to this website, this is an Access website, because all the materials that we've developed for this class that we now are trying to scale and to introduce to the entire university community are gathered on the course website. This is a website. It's a picture of the website, but I'm going to go to the internet if I know how to do this here. Let's see. The internet. Let's see right there. We go to the internet and we go. This is the website itself. So it's a course website that is meant to implement engaged learning. And over the years, we developed various tools with our model of engaged learning in mind. That is, how do we take and make the students work and create the data, the information, the substance of the course. And I'm not going to introduce everything, but if you go to weekly assignments here, for example, you can see how the course works. It's a series of meetings that you have, lecture 1, lecture 2, sessions, and in each lecture there is a series of exercises that the students do prior to arrival to the class, in which they develop the information of that session on their own. And everything is here. You can see in parentheses all sorts of things that are changing. For example, in this class, no textbooks anymore. The dreadful textbooks where you read hundreds of pages a day, a week for classes, mostly you don't read them or you try to go around them. We eliminated all of that. It's all about students' work. So for example, I'll give you just one example so we get a feeling of what's involved in this. If we talk about the first session, this is a course about the region of Israel. It's a geographical introduction. It says, I don't know how well you can read it, but I'll read it for you. It says, the geographical setting and the historical framework. A classical introductory session. In that session, what the students do prior to the arrival to class, and you do need your University of Michigan credentials because of copyrights and so forth in order to access this. But anyone can go in and see this. When you go into the session is a series of exercises. You see there is a short introduction to what is geography, and then the exercise in this case asks them to look at maps, geography and maps. That's very simple. We provide the maps, we provide short information about the maps, an instruction of what to do with the maps, and they have the maps to look at the maps. The important thing is that each one of these exercises ends with what we call, in the taxonomy of the class, in the language of the class, a yellow question. After every exercise, and yellow because it's always in yellow, there's a question that comes and asks the students to summarize or to think about the information that they extracted from whatever piece of material. In this case, maps. It could be art, it could be a passage. So they saw the maps of the Mediterranean world. They were asked to look for certain things, and here they're asked to summarize what they have. In the second exercise, we give them the historian and the geographer, the classical geographer, George Adam Smith. We give a short introduction of who he is, a passage from George Adam Smith, usually short passages, and again, a yellow question. So they read about him and they ask what to do. They're asked certain questions that force them to think about the information that they extracted from this information. They could, like in any classical class about the humanities, could have also material from modern scholars. So here's a modern scholar by the name of Biger, Gideon Biger, that they want to read, a short introduction of who this scholar is. The article that they need to read is here in PDF. They have that, and they have a yellow question about it. All the yellow questions are then summarized. Not good, jumping. All the yellow questions are summarized in writing. You see there is a document, you see right here. Yellow question document, you download the documents, there is the yellow questions themselves. You have to summarize, you have to submit it, you get a grade. The class is a long series of small grades that the students accumulate for every exercise. Nothing is done in the class without receiving a grade for it, and the grades accumulate to the final grade eventually. On top of these exercises, we've developed, for example, video clips. If you're in introduction, we talked about bridging the gap. You can go to, you have to watch a video. So you come into the video session, an introduction of what this video is. A video clip that we shot over the years. In this class, we shot about 10, 12 video clips in various areas in the region. You watch the video clip here and you have a yellow question about it. This is a video clip that introduces the geography of the region. There are video clips that introduce the culture, the food, various historical sites. We talk about, say, a famous king like King Herod, who built a magnificent place like Masada. You may have heard of Masada and the mass suicide that happened there in the year 73 CE. That's one of the things that we teach. We take the students with the video clip and your humble servant or one of my students or someone else in the class takes them around Masada and shows them 6-7 minutes video clips. Students watch video clips all the time on YouTube throughout the day. There are studies that the average American college student watches anywhere between 20 to 30 video clips a day on music and sports and whatever it is. Why shouldn't they watch our video clips as well? So they watch our video clips and sometimes they add their own video clips on various things. That's one of the things that we've developed, engaging them through video clips. They have yellow questions here too, and they bring that material. Another element that we have in this that I'm not going to go into is, I'm just introducing it as sort of a touch, is slides. Every class shows many, many slides. We haven't invented that. However, how many of the slides that we show in class register in a meaningful way in the mind of the students and play an active role in the intellectual and learning experience that they have in whatever class they have? Usually the slides are in the background, you see them for 10 seconds, you forget them after 10 seconds, and that's pretty much it. So we took slides in those discussions and we turned them into a learning tool. So you can see on every class, other than the readings, which I showed you, or the video clips, there are also images. There are certain images that the students have to study. They go into an image database. There's an image database, and the image database shows all the slides that I will later on show in class. But, no good. What did I do?
Back on the cross.
Go back there. Okay, let's see if I know how to do this. So, for example, on the issue of geography, which is where we are, it's one class. We're in geography. You see here, right here, it says geography. They see all the slides. If there's one slide, they click on the slide, double click on the slides comes up. And next to it, there's an information, all the information that usually a teacher would provide in class when the teacher shows that slide that doesn't register throughout the class. The students have that information already available and they know about the slides because they learn about it. So they read the description. If the description has certain terms that they don't know, for example, here, I don't know if it's easy for you to read here, but in the description, there's a name mentioned by the name of Herod Antipas. I'm not going to check here who knows who Herod Antipas is. You probably don't know. The students shouldn't know either. So they go to Herod Antipas, and a box comes up with an explanation who Herod Antipas is. If they want to read more about him, there is information. There's the ability to read more. Every slide has a map associated with it. Why am I not able to scroll down? Maybe scroll down from here. Here we go. Every slide has a map associated with it, so the slide is located on the map right here of the region. There's a timetable. There are all sorts of exercises. The students know the slide. Then when the slide comes again in the class, they're already familiar with it. We breach the geographical gap because they're seeing all sorts of places, but they're now seeing it in a meaningful way. Those are some of the things between slides, video clips, various exercises, and then taking all that and bringing it into the classroom. And the students do all that work, about an hour and a half of work prior to every class. But it's not a work that is just dreadful work of reading long pages as I used to do as a student in all sorts of meaningless books that I really don't understand. It's information that they do, and they develop data for which they are graded. That's a great incentive. Everything in the yellow questions is always graded. And then they bring it into the class, and the class becomes like a stadium of minds of students where things are thrown at the teacher, and I have to organize all of it. And I'll show you some pictures of the classroom later on of how I do that. That's the introduction. In order to give you a feel for this, what I will do is focus on one element I still haven't mentioned and let you do it on your own. A third, remember I talked about various goals of this project. One of them is engaged learning. The second is bridging the gaps in the plural between us and the ancient world. The third goal of our project is to better use various resources that are available on our campus and are usually kind of neglected by various classes or used in a very minimal way. One of the greatest treasures for the ancient world on the Ann Arbor campus is the Kelsey Museum of Archaeology. With a raise of hand, how many of you have been to the Kelsey? Everyone has been to the Kelsey once or know at least where it is there on State Street. A beautiful, small university museum, extremely rich with material. We checked how many students go to the Kelsey Museum. We did all these tests, Julie's people and others. We ran questionnaires in our class. So in a class of 500 students, in the year, if I remember correctly, either 2010 or 2011, only about 30% ever visited the Kelsey. And among those who visited, none of them could have, not none of them, but a very small percentage, which I can't remember, but it's all in our studies. Some of them are being published, so you can all read that. Very small amount of students could have said anything meaningful about the Kelsey. Yeah, it's a museum of archaeology, but what did you learn there? What did you see there? Very few students, and most of the students, 60 to 70%, their foot has never set foot in the Kelsey. So what do? We take them to the Kelsey? Yeah, so you take the students to the Kelsey, you show them around. They're not going to remember even a minute of this 3 days after, not to say 3 years after. We want to turn the Kelsey into a engaged learning, hands-on tool for the study of the ancient world. How do you do that? You make the students work somehow with the objects themselves. Research it, look at it, turn it around, extract information for it, summarize it, get a grade on it, bring it back to class, and then use it in the learning experience. Well, we had to first persuade the Kelsey people to allow us to even touch those objects, those artifacts. That took some convincing. You know, you had to show them that we're serious about this. But over the years, we developed all sorts of tools, and I'm going to do that with you right now. We're going to do this in this setting right here. So here's what we're going to do. I'm not going to explain it. We're just going to do it. Each group, each table, is going to get one Kelsey object. And what I would like to ask, if possible, that we have we kind of fill some of the tables that are not so. Ma'am, if you're willing to move here, and maybe you too, so we fill this table right here, and maybe, sir, could you please move to this table right here? We have a nice group of people. What you need to have, each table needs to have a computer. Since I'm able to convince the Kelsey, please. I'm able to convince the Kelsey to allow my students to work with the objects, but never in my life would I be able to convince the Kelsey to bring the objects here. So if the Kelsey cannot come here, we're going to go to the Kelsey electronically, okay? And you'll see, because the students do the same thing. They go to the Kelsey themselves once or twice for 45 minutes or 3 times, but still it's not enough for the project. So they have to access the Kelsey electronically as well as you will do now. So if you have a computer, there's one computer in each table, one computer. Julie has a computer. There's a computer here. The people with a computer, please go to a browser. Google any web browser, okay? And on the web browser, put my last name, Eliav, and then put the words Land of Israel. Eliav, Land of Israel, and browse that. You'll get the first link would be to this page. Okay, so if you put Eliav, Land of Israel, and you click on whatever arrived, the first thing, you'd come to this page. Do you have it? Matt has it. How about you, ma'am? Julie, do you have it? You do. How about you guys? You have it. You have it too. Excellent. All right. Now, so you know this website. This is the course website. I'm not going to go into it, but we're going to look into one exercise that we do. And the exercise that we want, please look, the computer people, is this blue element right here. If you hit this blue element twice, it says Kelsey Experience. You're going to come into the realm of the Kelsey. Here we go. You should have this page on. You have it. Okay. This is our class website, what's called the Kelsey Experience. We're not going to do it all. You see there are various exercises. We're going to go into exercise 1, and this is how it's going to work. Each, just like the students, if you go into exercise 1, you'll see it's a list of 10 objects. A list of 10 objects. They fall up here. Now, the list of 10 objects, these are ancient objects related to my class that I chose from the Kelsey, that is, they're related to Israel and Palestine, that the students work on regularly throughout the semester and develop papers and exercises and so forth. You're going to do it yourself. So, based on the table, each table is going to get a different object. This table is going to be object 1. This table is going to be object 2, object 3 right there, and object 4. You're going to get what the students receive, which one of the things in the class, everything is electronic except the exceptions. So here's the worksheet for exercise 1. You have it right here, spread it around. Some of the exercises you cannot do because they require the object itself. Say if you want to measure the object, you can't do that. But all the other things you can do, and especially if you go into the exercise, you'd see there are various tools. There are pictures, but more important, find the 3D presentation, which my friend Tom Bray has invented and has created, and he's right here, and implemented for us. And with the 3D, you can see the object, you can turn it around, you can come closer with your computer, work on that. I'm going to give you about 10 minutes now, and you have to fill as much as you can of this page. We're then going to discuss it together. All right, my friends. Unfortunately, we don't want to run out of time, and I have just a certain amount. So whatever, you got a taste of what was going on in the classroom. You got a taste of the ancient world. Let me tell you a little bit about how this would work with the student experience, and obviously it's much more developed. So first of all, when the students do this at the Kelsey Labs, which is 3 floors underneath State Street, you have to come in places that are not open to the public, so they get a sense of excitement and adventure right there. They're accessing university spaces that are closed to all their friends and everyone. They're very special. Prior to that, we take them and show them the Kelsey around as well, and there's a series of exercises. If you go to this website, you can see there's an introductory tour, and you can see all the exercises that they have to do to get acquainted with the Kelsey itself. They come to the labs 3 times in different times throughout the semester, and throughout those 3 times, each student works only on one object. There are many exercises, exercise 1, 2, 3. We play around with various variations. But the student becomes a real expert on there, not like you for 5-10 minutes. They first take the measurements and they work around. Let me show you let me see if I can go back to it. Website right there. No, I want the PowerPoint. Here it is. So if you go, let me show you some of this element. So here are the students in the Kelsey labs with some of my GSIs, some of my graduate students, the Kelsey person itself. The students are around tables, they receive their objects, they work in pairs. That's the one that you saw already. Here's the axe that this table worked on. This student is working on that axe right now with the same worksheets that you have. They go step by step on this, investigating the material. This is another object that we didn't work on, an ossuary right there. See, they have all sorts, they have magnifying glasses, they have measuring tools, they have to work with, bound by the Kelsey rules of preserving objects with gloves and so forth. So they're really partaking in the process of exploring and researching those objects. That's our engaged learning. They become the experts. They develop the knowledge. Here's the object that you guys worked on. You see, they hold it. Here now you can see the proportion. You weren't clear on how big it is, but they hold it, they look at it, they work on it. Some of them are very small. They work with magnifying glasses. There's an amulet, something that was on a string. Some of them have to work with scripts. We don't assume any knowledge. This is in Mandaean, so we give them the text, translate it into English, but they have to find various things. They work and they look for them here in the various exercises. We have GSIs who have been trained by me or by others, helping them around, like I was going around the tables so they don't get lost, and they work on it. What I'll show you now, a video clip that kind of summarizes this experience so you get a feel for what the students are doing.
I always tell the students the Kelsey Museum is like a time machine. You walk into here and you're transported thousands of years into the ancient world through these artifacts.
I had a chance to work with an artifact that's actually sort of an amulet to ward off evil spirits. The fact that I could hold an object that someone had made thousands of years ago was really incredible, and I kind of got to be an archaeologist for a day.
So that was getting us thinking there must have been something sitting in there for a while, maybe water or dirt. When I first started looking at it, I saw that the inside was a little dark up halfway, so I sort of started thinking maybe it's a pot, they put flowers in it, and that's how I got the darker shade. Our pot was part of the burial process for Jews in the ancient time. They would bury a body and come back a year later, collect the bones and put it in this pot. And the designs on the front were very interesting too because they were done very precisely. So I knew this wasn't just any old storage unit.
The land of Israel, Palestine through the ages, is a course that I've been teaching at the University of Michigan now for 13 years. On paper, it's a history course. In this class, they engage in a wide range of activities on almost a daily basis, and they themselves produce a lot of the information of the course. For example, at the Kelsey Museum, they extract the information from those objects and then incorporate it into the learning.
It's really been a crash course in ancient history because Israel and Palestine has been really in the center of world events.
Ceramic, stone? Maybe, yeah, I think probably ground out of stone.
You're right.
The university has sent over the years teams of photographers and speakers and teachers to various sites in the Middle East, and we took short clips, 4 or 5 minutes each, to various sites. So when we're talking about a certain battle, or talking about a certain event, a huge event in the Middle East, students through the website can go with their teacher to that actual site in the Middle East.
This class has opened my mind up to different classes. You know, everyone's very structured and focused on their major or minor. They don't really take time to look at classes that might be interesting.
The word is going out that at the University of Michigan, there's an experiment with something new related to teaching of the ancient world. We need to gamble and experiment with all sorts of new things because the world is changing.
So just to get a sense of it, and I have one final sentence for you, which is to say there are many opportunities out there. Once you start playing with the concept of engaged learning, I think the possibilities are endless. You know, any component of a learning process could turn into an adventure or an exercise where the students take a larger role and therefore engaged. There's much more to say about this, but I think I'm going to stop here just to allow for some sort of a discussion or questions or comments or insights that you guys have about what you've done or about things in general. We would love to hear and take note.